Tomorrow, March 19th, 2021, is going to begin the March Cup, which is the second in the Little Cup series that was started by PhysicsFan with the February Cup. This one, the March Cup, is going to be hosted by Norm. Norm will not be participating in the event, and it's going to have a slightly different format. Whereas the February Cup was best of 3 double elimination with best of 5 semifinals and then a best of 5 for finals, and obviously the opportunity for a grand final with a bracket reset because double elimination means that you have 2 lives. The March Cup's differences are going to be that it's going to be made to be done in one day as follows. The March Cup is going to seed the 16 players that are involved. It's going to cut to 16, seed those players, and then they're going to pair off against one another in best of 3s. There will eventually be a best of 5 finals. However, there is no double elimination component. There is no loser's bracket. There is no lower bracket. You don't get to make a lower bracket run. If you lose your best of 3, you are out. And so that means that this is going to be a new tournament for the Little Cup series, but because we're on the eve of the March Cup, I thought it would be interesting to do a power ranking. I did a power ranking of the February Cup, and that seemed to get a lot of traction and get a lot of eyeballs and get me some messages from people about, no, you could have done this player here, and this player should have been over there, what are you doing with this and that? How did you have this take is galactic? This shouldn't necessarily be the case. And so after casting games in the February Cup, watching games that people have played throughout LittleWarGame, and then getting a general feel and applying my own metrics, I've decided I'm going to make this video the March Cup power ranking. March Cup power ranking is going to go from the worst player at number 16 all the way up to the top. And for the first set of players, these are going to be players where I don't think that they are a contender, which I use as language for people who are going to potentially win the event, and then dark horse, which are people that could win the event, but it is an outside shot. So these people are ranked in order of where I think their skill is, but I don't think that these players, barring a miracle Cinderella run, have really a chance of winning the tournament. So we're going to go over them in detail. Number 16 is going to be Mr. Pankaka. The problem for Mr. Pankaka is that Mr. Pankaka does play this mech style. Unfortunately, he plays like a version of mech that's not quite as powerful as Works, and definitely not on the same level as Rhinus is. He doesn't seem to macro particularly well relative to the field of competition he's going to be going up against, and as we go up the list, you will see that there's almost no possibility that he will be able to take, I think, even a single best of 3. And in that, since he is ranked in the bottom or near the bottom, the way that the tournament is set up, he's going to be seeded at the bottom, so he's going to have to play one of the top seeds right out, and that means that his chances of getting out past his first round are very, very, very slim, barring, of course, a disqualification or somebody just outright leaving. Number 15, I have JY the Snap. This is not to impugn the honor or the ability of JY. JY has obviously gotten coached by AC. He is doing phenomenally well in the Mentor tournament, but I think it's worth mentioning that he's doing phenomenally well in the Mentor tournament, where there is a separate skill distinction, whereas that is a place that people like JY and like Mr. Pankaka would in fact be encouraged to go, and they can play there, and they can improve, and they have people that are more or less, with some hiccups, on the same caliber or relative skill level. That is not the case here. I do think that JY can beat Mr. Pankaka. I think his raw macro is a bit better, and courtesy of coaching with AC and his own skill improvement, JY has shown that he has not only the raw macro skills to overtake someone like Mr. Pankaka, but also the game knowledge, the style, and frankly, he has the confidence and swagger that is necessary to keep your headspace in an appropriate place, provided that's not braggadocious nonsense, and that's how you actually interpret the game state yourself. So I think he can beat Mr. Pankaka. Next, we have Human. Again, this is a placement I'm a little bit iffy at number 14 for Human. Human is someone who has been putting in a phenomenal amount of work in mods and has done some training as well for, as a mentor in the Mentor tournament. The problem is I don't see Human play very many games recently, and the problem for that is that when we get into the higher tier of players over here, you're going to see that there's a lot to fight off against. Human is a mentor in the Mentor tournament, but keep in mind that a mentor in the Mentor tournament doesn't mean necessarily the most skilled player, but it just means someone who can bring resources, attention, focus, and the knowledge of their experience to a player, even if their mechanical ability isn't quite up to snuff. I do think that Human has the Human special in their pocket, and that's something they can use to get some games here or there, but frankly, there was something of an underwhelming performance in the February Cup from Human relative to the competition. Next up is number 13. I have a question mark by this because I don't know what their real level is, and I haven't gotten a good way of estimating it, but it's Silver Boss. There's not much to say here other than just by eye test, I don't think that Silver Boss is going to be better than the people that I have above them in this ranking, but it's hard to say because there haven't been many tournaments that this person has participated in as of late, and also while they're on Discord infrequently, the times that I see them in game are almost non-existent, and I'm on quite a bit, so unless they're in mods or single player or doing something and grinding behind the scenes in a way that I haven't seen, I don't feel comfortable really putting their position as any higher than this. There is another player that I have question marks about. We'll get to them when we get to that point. The person I have over Silver Boss is Python. Python is somebody that believes that they can beat JY and believes that they're, a little bit a touch, by their own admission, they're a little bit of a touch below some of the people who are more on the mid-tier table here. And Python doesn't think too badly of themselves and certainly can give insight and feedback on games such as like watching Baby Mine or Felipe Brazil or other people who are students in the Mentor tournament. Python is like in a good position relative to that skill-wise. The problem is that this is going to be Python's first event in quite a while, if ever. And additionally, I don't know what versatility or capability Python brings. I've seen from raw macro games what their skill level is, and after talking to them, I have an understanding of where they would place themselves. But here's the issue with that. If a person believes that they should place themselves at number one, it's easy to kick that off and say they're overconfident unless they really live up to that mantle, that title. The issue for people like Python is that when you put yourself as like, I'm kind of in the mid-table here, it either shows a lack of confidence in your abilities, which doesn't bode well for your mental game going into a best of three, or it's a realistic assumption of your skill level. In both cases, that indicates that your level is probably a bit lower than the top cut. I don't think it's offensive to put Python here at number 12. Number 11 is going to be WeirdRat. WeirdRat is a student in the Mentor tournament, contentiously, according to some. But WeirdRat is somebody that, gives people like Python a good game. WeirdRat also is someone that JY has said in an interview believes will win the Mentor tournament or is a strong number 2 for the Mentor tournament. And JY is, of course, also competing against this individual. So the mental game for WeirdRat over people like JY and over people like Python is pretty strong. The problem with WeirdRat is that WeirdRat plays kind of like a very reactive Rax. And the problem with reactive Rax at the moment is that Rax has some matchups that are kind of difficult for people of, I would say, below the top skill level. And that is Beast, Rax versus Beast is still something that feels very difficult to navigate. It still feels like a tightrope. And there are a lot of Beast players in this tournament, adding that WeirdRat also is going to be facing off not one, but potentially 3 people who can play Mech. And Rax versus Mech is something that Rax players, while they in theory have some advantages, it's very difficult to understand where the advantages are and to actually put them into practice. It's very much like in Super Smash Bros. Melee, when people said that Jigglypuff might not be top tier, but there's no one who's quite on the level of Hungrybox that they can actually play against to get the practice in. And so that's where WeirdRat sits. Dabina is at number 10, and I do believe that Dabina and WeirdRat are interchangeable in this sense. I do apologize to Dabina in that they're excluded from the Mentor tournament because their presumed level was higher. The issue is that we're not talking about presumed level. We're not talking about the level that Dabina has hit historically. We're talking about Dabina now. Dabina now I haven't seen play too many games. Yes, they've logged in for this tournament, and that's excellent, but the problem I have is I haven't seen many games from Dabina. I haven't seen them active in the game very much. And the way that I rank people is, what's your raw skill level, and then are you on the grind or are you taking a break? And then what is your form? Is it going up or is it going down? And the raw level of Dabina is certainly higher than number 10, but it's not much higher than number 10. Add in that I haven't seen Dabina play very many games, and add in that when you don't play many games, ring rust, form and rust is a very real thing in LittleWarGame as it is in fights like MMA. I do think that Dabina is a touch below where they should be and where their potential is in the ranking, but notice the air quotes I'm putting inside of that, and I think that number 10 out of 16 is respectable. Number 9, I'm going to put Thurx. This is going to be contentious because Thurx is a player that has received a lot of praise, mostly because Thurx is someone who has beaten Aces Rax, has practice partners in Yummy Blah Blah, and people of that nature, is highly touted by JY as the overwhelming S-tier favorite for the Mentor tournament. The problem I have with Thurx is that Thurx's results in the February Cup were overwhelmingly underwhelming. And the problem is that I think that Thurx is very, very good in one specific style. I do think that if you get Thurx in a Beast versus Rax, where the Rax player sits back and doesn't do anything unexpected or cheesy, Thurx can display what they have done and what they have practiced and learned that has made them an excellent player in that particular style, in that particular matchup. I don't know how Thurx rates in Beast versus Beast, and I would suggest that Beast versus Mech is going to be very difficult for Thurx, just from a practice element, from an experiential component. And also, the way that Thurx played in the tournament, you can take it one of two ways, neither which of them are beneficial to Thurx. You could say that Thurx played at a level below what their current capability is, and then we have to ask, is that a confidence issue? Is it a tournament issue? Was their specific opponent ready for them? Because experience is a factor that many of these players have over Thurx and can leverage into Thurx, even if Thurx's mechanical abilities have improved, or Thurx is starting to integrate various mechanical, button clicking selection based aspects of the game. more quickly and flowing together more readily. That's something experienced players can leverage over Thurks. The other possibility isn't that Thurks did worse because they were in a tournament setting for the first time in a while and they were up against players that they respect or that have more experience than them. It's that Thurks' level just isn't that high. That Thurks is an excellent sniper in one particular matchup, but not necessarily in a matchup, by the way, that racks players for the most part, not generally and not at a top level, but for the most part find difficulty in managing. And maybe Thurks is just excellent at that one matchup. And so what's more likely? Either way, I can't justify putting Thurks in the top half, but we are getting into the top half. This is the point at which I would suggest there is a cutoff and a tier below. So all of the people who have been 9 through 16, the cutoff is not that they are numbers 9 through 16. It is that the players number 8 and above are simply on a different level skill-wise than those individuals. And so you're going to see what I mean when we get to our number 8 player, who's going to be PhysicsFan. This seems like a drastic undercutting of PhysicsFan's abilities. When you consider that PhysicsFan is someone who was undefeated until they went up against Rhinus in the February Cup, then PhysicsFan, had a close game 1, and then tried for a cheese that had potential but failed in game 2, was dropped into the loser's bracket, and then had to go through an interaction in the loser's bracket that showed, some potential, some skill, some relevancy. The problem for PhysicsFan is as follows. I ask all the time, what is the player's level? Well, I do think that Physics' level is slightly higher than this. PhysicsFan's experience is certainly higher than this. So maybe Physics shouldn't be number 8, should be number 5 or number 6. The problem is as follows. If you are playing against PhysicsFan and you're an experienced player, you know to be afraid of and to watch out, or to watch out for, depending on your level of skill and experience, the fact that he's going to do a proxy 2 Rax Raider. It is going to happen. He has shown a proclivity for doing it. And if you are a person who is excellent at cheese defense, you are just going to shut that down. And in that it is kind of expected. PhysicsFan is a person who also is formed as he's been playing some games as of late, and he's beaten Yummy, and he's quite happy with that. But notice the context is that he made it as if it were a special occasion to have beaten Yummy, someone who was also in this tournament, who I rate much more highly. Notice that PhysicsFan is someone who, when he has fought Rhinus in the past, he came up against a brick wall. Notice that he even played against Norm in the February Cup, and in a macro game was found lacking against Norm. Now, these are areas of strength for all of these people. Obviously, Yummy Blah Blah is a former number 1 player in the game for a certain era. Rhinus is someone who is used to being cheesed because his mech strategy and play is so good that people trying to cheese him out early. And Norm is someone who, as his name implies, it goes about trying to have a normal game plan, a normal macro game. So PhysicsFan was attacking each of those players in their areas of strength and was found wanting in each one. The problem is that Physics was trying to attack those players in their areas of strength. And so if you look at what PhysicsFan's strength is, it's a particular build in cheesing, and you look at what PhysicsFan's raw ability is, it's a touch below in all of those areas against all of those people I just named. But a touch below isn't drastically below. I think that's enough for PhysicsFan to just play a normal game and stomp most people out. I do think that PhysicsFan might lose to Thurks, the player placed below him, number 9, in that PhysicsFan kind of gives Thurks this clout in this respect. But I do think that the writing will be on the wall as soon as he busts out his, it's gonna happen, I promise you, if he feels he's in a pinch, the double Rax Proxy Raider. And I think having such a predictable style and not really any outstanding strength relative to the rest of this field I'm going to mention above him means that PhysicsFan has to be number 8. But you can see why there's a tier division between PhysicsFan, all the experience that's brought up there, and the certain kill-like ability that is contained within and below. Number 7 is contentious, because I have not seen this player play many games, and therefore I'm stuck as to where to put them. This is similar to Silver Boss, but the questionable aspect is informed by who their practice partners are, what their experience is, and that's going to be Clatterheesa. Clatterheesa is someone that Clatterheesa is a person you can look up on Wikipedia, actually. He's a former StarCraft 2 Grandmaster Zerg player. And there's a pretty good history of people who are good at StarCraft coming over to LittleWarGame and being pretty good at LittleWarGame. Not the best right away. There are certain things that you have to adapt to and take into consideration that are different, but I do think that many of the raw skills transfer over. Minimap awareness, not being supply blocked, making sure that your build is crisp and refined in the sense that you are always making units, and your general micro. All of these things suggest a very high level as a starting point for Clatterheesa. The problem for Clatterheesa may become the level of awareness they have with LittleWarGame specifically. Norm is not in this tournament as a player, but he has played against Clatterheesa, and notes that it is not possible that they are a Smurf or any other player because of the difficulty that they present in like the difficulty that they present as a challenge to their opponent. So Clanner, he's, I think, just being a former StarCraft 2 Grandmaster of Zerg means that it's almost impossible for you to, I wouldn't say impossible, but it's very unlikely that you're going to lose to people like Mr. Pankaka or JY, who at times can find their macro lacking. When you're a Zerg player, macro is not allowed to lack in StarCraft 2. And so while there is the same question as to where is this person going to rank up as Silver Boss, the general gameplay and background of Clatteriza is higher than that of Silver Boss, but because we don't know more about them, it's hard to put too much more stock into them than that. I do think that of the people above him, Visixpan at number 8 has the most opportunity to get something done against Clatteriza due to their game knowledge, game awareness, and their general feel for the units, but that is a big speculation. It is not guaranteed. Going up, we're going to have number 6 in the list is going to be Works. Here's the thing about Works. I do think that Works, while Works is a finalist and got second place in the February Cup, I believe that that placing is a little prematurely high. And we'll see why for a couple of reasons. First off, when we got to the grand finals, Works came out of the losers or lower bracket into Rhinus, who was from the upper bracket. And although it was played over 2 days, and my concerns with that were addressed in a previous video, Works went 1-3. He won 1 game and lost 3. And in fact, the only game he won against Rhinus was when he did the same build that Rhinus did, but he did it as he did 1 base double mill against Rhinus's 1 workshop expand into mill, which is about as hard countery as you can possibly get. And it was on Thieves' Isle, where he had an expectation that's what Rhinus would do. So he was given the benefit of what the map was, and knowing that Rhinus is a mech player through and through, and that Rhinus had been working on integrating this gyrocraft style. And so he took advantage of multiple aspects that were in his favor there to win 1 game. But he only won 1 game. This is a person who tried to play a 1 versus mech versus mech with some dragons incorporated against Rhinus and was found lacking on Stream Junction. This is somebody that, even though he was playing up against in the losers bracket, he was playing against Glaba to see who would fight Prankster Gangster. And when he fought Glaba, he almost lost to a 2-den rush that Glaba could not control because Glaba had like 4 seconds of delay in all of his micro. Yes, he beat Prankster Gangster, but he beat a very demoralized Prankster Gangster who frankly thought he had been cheated out of the series in the winner's bracket against Rhinus. And their skill set is just fundamentally different. So I do think that Works is going to present a massive problem to the people below him. It's not easy to count him out. He does integrate something of the Human Special and faction hybridization, and his mech, losing a 40-minute macro game against Rhinus is more than enough to say that you're not bad at LittleWarGame, especially since they went the distance in mech versus mech. Rhinus just showed that he is not the mech player. He's not a mech player, he is the mech player, at least in that matchup between the two of them. And so when we look at the people that are above Works, I don't know how Works actually beats these people, starting with number 5, Glaba. Glaba versus Works actually happened, but anyone who looks at the fact that Works won that in the losers, I believe, finals or semifinals, losers semifinals of the February Cup is going to be sorely disappointed to realize that Glaba forfeited because the ping was so bad that it was unplayable, and Works nearly lost game 1 despite Glaba having unmentionable levels of ping. Glaba is a person who went 1-2 against Prankster Gangster. Glaba is a person who crushed their other opposition on the way through to the February Cup, and this is a person who has clearly been playing a little bit. I have seen more games of Glaba online on their primary account, playing games of LittleWarGame, and their general level, I think, is just higher than Works. The problem for all of the people below Glaba is that, at least before in the February Cup, you could say maybe Glaba hasn't been playing many games. Maybe Glaba's form has dipped a little bit. Maybe there's some rust. Well, Glaba's level is very high. I don't think it's top 3 in the game right now, but it is very high. And the problem is that the form, maybe it hasn't dropped, and maybe it hasn't risen either, but it's stayed level. He's in practice and in form well enough to manage form for something like this March Cup, which I think presents a big problem to the people below. Now we're going to go on, and I would say that Glaba is the first of the dark horses. For me, a dark horse is somebody that could win the tournament, but that'd be very unlikely. But what's more likely is, these are people you expect to see in semifinals and finals, and I do expect that Glaba is going to be that person, ranked number 5. Number 4, also a dark horse to win the event, is going to be Prankster Gangster. There's no way that we can prove the counterfactual. There's no way we can go into an alternate reality. But I think that if Game 5 had been played on the same day, that of Rhinus versus Prankster Gangster, that Prankster Gangster would have completed the reverse sweep and he would have gone into winners finals. And in fact, the fact that he got third place in the February Cup is an overachievement of what was expected of him, but an underachievement of the form that he brought to play. Because I do believe, just from things I've seen on the Discord, his general demeanor, the way he's talked about it, etc., just things that I know, that Prankster Gangster felt really demoralized after another game 5 of this series. He was about to reverse sweep, came on a different day. Then he loses and goes into the losers bracket, and he just kind of uncharacteristically slumped against Rooks. He didn't look like he was in full control of his faculties and his powers. And so Prankster Gangster is someone who, he's beaten Glava 2-1. He is someone who, he looks like, the Glava, the guy who could almost beat Rooks with 4 seconds of ping. Prankster Gangster beat him 2-1. Prankster Gangster has been putting in work offline against people like Norm. He's been putting business in against other mech players, against other Beast and Rax players as well. He's shown a comprehensive understanding of how to play the game that is incorporating his swarmy wolf snake style, and it just seems to work. Either the meta fits him, or he's elevated his skills to the point that he has made the meta fit him. But Prankster Gangster is, I don't think, a tier up on Glava, but he is slightly favored over him. I just can't justify putting him any higher on this list, because I do think that there are people, we'll get into this more for our number 3, I do think there are people below Prankster Gangster that can snipe him and do work against him. But that's going to get us into our number 3, and it's going to be Rhinus. Now, how could it be Rhinus? Is it Rhinus the person I think would have lost against Prankster Gangster? Yes, I think in that specific series, with all the context that is involved, that Rhinus would have lost against Prankster Gangster. But I think Rhinus would have lost against Prankster Gangster because it was literally 4 or 5, as early as 4 or 5 in the morning for the February Cup when he was playing that Game 5. He had to start the tournament late and then go into the wee hours of the morning to play it. He is a person who's in form. He is a person whose style has improved. He is a person whose micro is not to be, trifled with. And he has notoriously good cheese defense. So Rhinus shuts down a lot of people below him. Prankster Gangster can lose individual games against people below him, but Rhinus just does not get cheesed as successfully as people would like to cheese Rhinus. And Rhinus will drag the game into a longer state, and Rhinus has a combination of experience, style, and the benefit of playing the mech faction that, with the current state of repair, also means if you, as was said in the Discord recently, if you want to play against Rhinus and you just want to A-move an army and win, you're gonna have a bad time. And that's the thing, Rhinus stomps the people that Rhinus beats. I don't think that Rhinus does well against Prankster Gangster specifically, but that's a rematch I would love to see. And the benefit to Rhinus here, and the reason Rhinus is above Prankster Gangster, is that this tournament isn't going to start in the wee hours of the morning for Rhinus. Rhinus gets to come into this more fully charged than before, with more time availability and the same form and level of focus and capability as before. So Rhinus, however, is the last of the people that I think are the dark horse to win. I still have the criticism of Rhinus that I did in the February Cup when the original power ranking thought that people like AC would be there. I do think that Rhinus can beat Glava and Prankster Gangster. I do think, however, it will be difficult. I actually think that number 5 Glava can beat Rhinus more easily than the other way around. But if you look at the overall strength that Rhinus presents relative to Glava, yeah, Glava might do better in that matchup, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to rank Glava higher, because Rhinus just takes people who are number 7, 8, and down and squashes them, and there's not a problem for him. But he does have difficulties against the 2 people I'm going to put as contenders. And these contenders, I don't have a favorite for this tournament. I don't have someone where I say, if you had $1,000, put it on this person. But I do have 2 contenders, people that you expect to get to the finals. And the number 2 player is going to be AC. AC is going to be number 2. All I have to do here is justify why AC is number 2 and not number 1. So the issue with AC is as follows. AC has been playing games against Daz. AC's been playing games against Norm. AC's been playing games against a variety of people. AC's level is already, I would say, number 1. I would say number 2 or number 3 among all players in the game, and currently. And the problem for everyone else is that the easy number 1 used to be Daz. It's not as easy anymore. 1, Daz isn't in this tournament, so that's not relevant. The other thing is, but the problem for AC is as follows. Level very high. Experience and knowledge of LittleWarGame, very high. Ability to communicate that and coach that and mentor that, also very high. Like, very methodical player. Someone who's also got a lot of tournament experience. The problem for AC presents itself as follows. AC is a developer. AC has been busy doing literally other things than LittleWarGame. And what more is there to say from there? Like, that means that the form might be even, but I don't think the form is improving. And if the form is just, if the skill level is high and the form is even, that's enough at AC's level, especially with the experience and the knowledge and the game-specific information and the series planning to be a contender. But I have to then justify why my number one pick is actually Yummy Blah Blah. I think that this is a number one pick for a variety of reasons that aren't so much in the game as outside the game. And keep in mind, I think Yummy Blah Blah and AC are both on the same tier of contender status. I wouldn't be surprised if the finals ended up being the two of them against one another. But why do I have Yummy over AC? First off, when Yummy was playing as Yummy Blah Blah, for one of the most stagnant and longest periods of LittleWarGame's history, Yummy Blah Blah was number one and AC was number two, and AC himself acknowledged it. So there's a mental component to that head-to-head matchup right there that maybe AC has addressed, but that time is, a long time past. But old wounds, it remains to be seen if that has a component or an impact on their matchup. Secondly, Yummy Blah Blah is a person whose actual raw level was, when they came back, their raw level at peak was higher than AC's in that particular meta. But additionally, now Yummy's been playing a lot of games. Yummy's form has actually improved. You look at the people that want to play against Yummy. Yummy wants to play against people, Daz, Dragon Archer Z, my contender for a GOAT candidate, actually. Like, my contender for GOAT, greatest of all time, wants to play against Yummy Blah Blah when Yummy is online, the same way that he would want to play against sometimes Norm, but to a greater extent, people like AC. This is someone whose ability that he respects, and he's who I think is the GOAT. So Yummy's raw ability might be even to AC's, but whereas AC is doing development and has other things going on in LittleWarGame that aren't strictly playing, Yummy doesn't have LittleWarGame responsibilities, if that makes sense. That means that Yummy can just focus on playing, can just focus on, all right, we're going to just improve. I just want to play this game to win this game. That, with the combination of the former long-standing head-to-head matchup between Yummy and AC, means that I think that Yummy is the number one player. I don't think there's a giant gap between them, but it will be interesting to see how that plays out. And again, I value the form and the attention that the player is bringing in. AC maintaining his form is not the same thing as Yummy actually shooting for the moon like it's GameStop. So with that, that is the March Power Ranking. If you're interested, if you have any issues with what the ranking is, or if you say, no, this person should be here or there or this other location, I got something wrong, tell me in the comments below. People love sending me PMs in LittleWarGame that tell me what they would do differently or what they would stack these people. But I want to hear actually in comments and in likes, what do you think? Where would you put these people? And if you are one of those people who's like, I'll just wait until after the tournament to go ahead and say that you were wrong about all these things, you know what? I encourage your delusion. Go ahead and feed the YouTube algorithm. But again, the March Cup is going to be starting tomorrow, and we'll be seeing how much of this theory crafting is made manifest, or is just so much food for thought. If you enjoy the content that I make on this channel, or for the LittleWarGame RTS channel on Twitch, or throughout any other space that involves LittleWarGame, please consider subscribing to the Patreon link in the description box below.